Hi, everyone. This is Kate Becker, and I am speaking for Group A. My group mates were Alex, Gina, and Thomas. So the data set that we chose to work with was the Iowa liquor sales data. And so we thought that it would be an interesting set to explore just because of the geographic location. And we were hoping we could see if there was any difference in drinking habits between Iowa and the rest of the country. So we looked into some outside sources. The one that was most helpful was alcohol.org. So they have a ranking of how many drinks are consumed by holiday for some of the most popular holidays. And so we decided to make our own list of this based on a few different factors that were included in the data set and compare to see if we got a similar ranking. So we also used a source called Womply, and they have similar data, but it is a little bit less obvious in the way that it's ranked. Most of what they looked into was financial. Average week mostly was revenue. But this was an interesting graph. It was like the seasonality of the local liquor stores. So we thought we could compare our data to that as well. And they also have a list of the top 5 biggest J's. So we compare our sales dollars to this to see if we came up with a similar ranking as well. So in our preliminary exploration, we did a little bit of data cleaning just to make sure everything was easier to work with and download. So what we first did was use a package called Lubridate to make the date column a date object so that we could manipulate it like that. And so with that, we limited our data to only include data points from the year 2016. And then we also fixed the column with the sales as that was a character column, and we made it into just a numeric column without the dollar sign. And so we did a little bit of summary just to look at what our data could tell us possibly. And this was a graph that I thought was interesting. It was bottles sold by the month. So I would have expected like a trend upward here with a lot of alcohol sales towards the end of the year with all of the winter holidays, but we aren't really seeing that. It's more of a concentration in the beginning of the year and then a drop off towards the end. We also looked at sale dollars, so that's the total number of dollars spent in each purchase. And so as you can see, this we limited it by quite a lot just to make this clearer because some purchases are really, really large. But this gives a general idea of the distribution. Most purchases seem to be under $100. So next we went into like formal data cleaning. And again, we used the package Lubridate. What we ended up doing was using interval, a function that would define an object of a certain range of dates. So I said from October 24th to October 31st, that's the week preceding and including Halloween, that all of those sales could be considered Halloween sales. And I did the same thing for each holiday. And then we used filter to only include data points from those holidays. And we also made a separate column called holiday that just listed which holiday it was. And we also didn't include any NAs for the dates as some of them had those. And then we made a model as well. We went with an ANOVA model just because an ANOVA can tell you differences between means of groups, and I thought that would be interesting to look at with holidays to see if there was any difference between the various holidays in terms of how much alcohol was sold. So we used sale dollars as the factor there. And so we get this result. This is technically statistically significant. However, as I explain down here a little bit more, we don't really have the assumptions required to like properly assume that the ANOVA is giving us the correct statistically significant results. So basically, real world data is a lot messier, and we just decided to analyze anyways, but proceed with caution and know that the results that we get from this ANOVA might not be completely accurate. So overall, it did say that holidays were significant. So that means that at least one of the holiday groups' means was different from the others. And then here you can see this is a post hoc Tukey test, which kind of shows the between specific holidays, like the top one is 4th of July and Cinco de Mayo. That was pretty close in terms of differences of means, but you have some that are pretty far off and some that are pretty far ahead. So we might be able to assume that there is a significant difference between holidays mean sales. Next, we made some graphs. This one was interesting. It was bottles sold by holiday. You can see it's listed there. Thanksgiving is pretty low, but 4th of July was the most in terms of bottles sold. Volume sold, 4th of July again, and Thanksgiving on the bottom. And sale dollars by holiday, again, 4th of July, but then we moved to Mardi Gras on the bottom. I thought that was a really interesting occurrence because you see Mardi Gras falls towards the middle really in terms of volume sold by gallon, but then in sale dollars for that block of time, it's pretty low. So it seems like the alcohol that people are purchasing around Mardi Gras is typically cheaper per gallon than for other holidays, which is kind of a interesting thing to think about. We also made a table. So these are the median sale dollars for each of those holidays. So they all fall pretty close to around like 70 or so, yeah, except for New Year's Eve, which means that people might be purchasing in smaller quantities around New Year's Eve, but at the same frequency in sale dollars as other holidays, as we see up above, because in sale dollars, it's still not at the bottom, so still does pretty well, just maybe smaller purchases. And then here is a box plot, also mapping the sale dollars. It's pretty even across the way. As you can see, there's a ton of outliers, and this even continues way up, but just to be able to see the graph, we limited that. All right, and finally, our comparison. So looking at the alcohol.org graph versus our volume sold, because we figured average number of drinks probably correlates best with the volume sold. They put Mardi Gras on the top, but it fell more towards the middle, and Thanksgiving was the lowest, and that was the same for us too. 4th of July was 4th from the top there, and it's number 1 for us. So Iowa might have a little bit more of a party vibe for 4th of July than the rest of the country. It's kind of interesting just to see how that stacks out. So it seems that Iowa might be a little different in terms of which holidays they celebrate the hardest. What we didn't include was winter holidays because there are just a lot and there's a long stretch, so it would be hard to determine with accuracy what people were actually buying the alcohol for. So we just decided not to include that, which will be seen a little bit later on. And then we looked at Womply for the 5 biggest days at liquor stores. So they had New Year's Eve as the top one, but we had that towards the bottom of the pack, 4th from the bottom, which is a little interesting. So Iowa might not go as hard for New Year's Eve as some other states do. Again, we didn't use Christmas Eve or December 22nd or Friday, December 21st, because winter holidays are just a little harder to make sure we're getting the accurate data. And then Thanksgiving Eve was the 3rd biggest, but we have it 2nd from the bottom. So Iowa definitely might be a little bit different in terms of drinking habits. Lastly, we have the seasonality graph. So I kind of duplicated this graph from the preliminary findings and I changed it out to have sale dollars as the y-axis instead. And we see a similar trend. So their graph is actually percentage of annual revenue by week, which is more of a proportion, but you do see like a general like upward trends towards the end of the year with more alcohol purchases for the winter holidays. But again, with Iowa, you see it's kind of like it goes up and then dips towards the end of the year, which again surprised me because usually there's a lot of drinking and festivities in the winter holidays. But I don't know, maybe people in Iowa just like their extended families a little bit more than the rest of the country. Um, Thank you for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed.